disturbing news. You might have heard it.
Yeah.
Rabbi Sachs.
Jonathan Sachs?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to make the Shir for Shlema for Harav Yaakov Tzvi Ben Liba. It seems he's had it before, and that this is a return. But let's hope. Let's hope it's Hashem that he'll be well. And yeah. Okay. So
Facebook.
Okay. So Bereishit, like not a hard parsha to have what to say. The choice is what are we going to say? But I wanted to stick with Tivot Shalom, and he comments on the words V'hinei Tov Ma'od, which it only says once in the creation, and it's only at the end when human beings are created. At the very end, V'hinei Tov Ma'od. Elokim et kol asher asa, V'hinei Tov Ma'od. Says in all of the different Chelkei Habriya and all the other stages, it says Vayer Elokim ki tov, except on Tuesday, and we know that Yom Shlishi, that's because there was separation of the waters, and we learn from that separation is problematic. We had all kinds of things about the waters from below feeling very bad and mourning, and in fact, now during when we were talking about Simchat Beit HaShoeva and the Niso Chamayim, so there were very Kabbalistic, beautiful ideas about connecting the waters from below and also to bringing up the waters from below and honoring the waters from below. But otherwise, every day it says Ki Tov. And then at the end it says Tov Ma'od, which means that this was the acme. In other words, if we're wondering what the order of creation was, one assumes in a way that it was going up, but it didn't have to be that way. You could start with your biggest thing at the beginning and then prepare everything that it needs. In fact, I think maybe it's Rashi who says, when you invite a guest, you don't have the guest come in and start cooking the meal. You make sure that the meal is ready and it's all set up and everything is beautiful. And then the guest comes, meaning people are the guests. And Hashem made sure everything was ready for us. But that implies that it could have been different. Okay, but it wasn't. So he's saying, we see by the word Tov Ma'od that there is the idea that now the world had reached its tachlit, its purpose. And Rabbi Chaim Vital was a student of, I think it was preceded the Ari, I believe. Anyway, he was a great Kabbalist, one of the heads in his book Eitz Chaim. כשעלה ברצונו יתברך שמו לברוא את העולם כדי להיטיב לברואה ויכירו גדולתו ויזכו להיות מרכבה למעלה להידבק בו יתברך. So he said when it occurred to Hashem, whatever that means, we don't know what that means, to create the world in order to do tov for his creations, and meaning here specifically humans, that they should know his greatness and be a merkava, which we translate as a chariot, a vessel in some way to connect to Hashem. Because what does the vessel do? The vessel is certainly subservient to what's in it. Nobody saves the box and throws out the contents. They'll keep but the box is important. It transports it. It also connects to it. It's not a very strong connection because it's actually simply holding it. And we know that we talk about the avot as being a merkava, chariot for Hashem. But the difference between a chariot and a box is a chariot moves. A chariot is basically a box with wheels. And therefore, a box that flies, whichever way it moves, but it does move. It doesn't sit still. So a box would sit still, but a chariot moves. And therefore it can go from down above and above down. It's a little bit like the ladder idea, also up and down and up and down, but there's always that connection. And Vahaino, Kimi Derech HaTov Leitiv. Now, this was a beautiful idea. It doesn't work only for Hashem, it works for us. It says something or somebody that is Tov, included in the definition of the word Tov is the word Meitiv. We have a bracha, Tov HaMeitiv. It seems that it's not that you're good and therefore you do good. It seems to suggest that in order to be good, you must do good. And that good and doing good are inextricably linked. Therefore, Hashem's quality of good includes doing good. Now, doing good needs a receiver. Again, we talk about Hashem, we're always, I don't have to say kiv yachol every 2 seconds because we don't really know what we're talking about. But it does seem that there's this idea that in order to have the description of good, there seems to be a need to do good. You can't have a good person who doesn't do good, especially in a person. This is true, obviously. If you're a good person and you don't do good, you're not a good person. You can't be a good person in a vacuum. And therefore, you have to be doing good. And therefore, Barelo Kim Makor HaTov, Hashem is after all the source of good and of chesed, and he created the world in order to bestow goodness on his creations. And after all, what is good in this world that is in the physical world, which is all difficult, a vale of tears, it's been described. It's a tough world. It's a very tough world. Some of us are very fortunate. Most of us are very fortunate. Roof over our head, a nice roof over our head, whatever. But there are many people for whom life can be extremely difficult. And it's maleya gon v'anacha. It's full of tribulations and sighs and difficulties. So where is this good? After all, it can't just be for you and me. It has to be also for all brewing. All creations have to have good. So that can't be, in other words, material good cannot be the definition of good because many people don't have it. It's interesting because now we just read Kohelet, and that's a lot of what Kohelet is all about. Kohelet is looking into the physical world and saying, what is good? My yitron, what's the value? And he talks about wealth and happiness and indulgence and even human wisdom. And he says in the end, many of those things are momentary. Basically, they die when we do. So where's the good? And his attitude is, mitachat shemesh ein yitron. In the physical world, there really is no good with a capital G. There are temporary pleasures, but there are no good. Shetov gashmi eino begeder good. Tov. He says that physical good is not good. Interesting. What do we call material belongings? We call them goods, but they're not really good. So many goods are actually bad. They spoil us, they rot our teeth, they make us obese. There are a lot of goods that make us so materialistic that we're never happy. If we are a little bit elevated, meaning we're not animals, because for an animal, physical good is all there is. They don't have any good with a capital G. They have only good with a small g. They get their food, they have their mates, whatever it is. But for a human being, that's not good. That's fleeting. That's hevel havalim, says Kohelet. Ela dimayon v'od pachot mizeh. He says it's it's imaginary and even less. It's not even good imaginary. And again, Hevel Havalim Amar Kohelet Hevalim Kol Hevel. That's what he's saying. Hevel is a mist. It has no reality. It has no, you can't grab onto it. Hatov Hamitiu Kamuvar B'dvarav. And this is what he said, again, Rav Chaim Vital. Shiyachad Emetzem Agviyah Shtechlikol Briyahi B'chtei Leitiv Libroav. Said along with this idea that Hashem created the world in order to bestow goodness on his creations, what is our good? To recognize the greatness of Hashem, to get close to Hashem. The more that we recognize his greatness, the more we can get close. I just saw a cute little video. Friends sent it to me. It's very good for our grandchildren. A little kid is about to eat a peach. A little frum boy with a yarmulke. And he's about to eat, and you see he didn't make a bracha. And all of a sudden, the peach disappears. And his sitter, which has now been anthropomorphized into this cute little character with a talus, starts telling him, what are you doing? He goes, okay, I made a mistake. He says, no. It's more than that. You know what a peach is? And he goes on and he talks to him about peaches and the great design in the world about peaches. It actually comes from a book called Designer World, which I read a long time ago, because peaches, about the pit, it's made with such godless, with such unbelievable design, as is our homing pigeons, things that to this day they don't understand how a homing pigeon gets home. They don't know what it is that gets him there. And this is up to date. So when we look at the world, the whole point is to recognize the greatness of Hashem and to get close to him. And then we can be a Merkava. The Merkava is that chariot moving from here to there. It brings us up to Hashem. Think of that image. That's Eliyahu going up into a Merkava, fiery Merkava, into Shemayim. It transported him up. But by the same token, the Merkava, which is us humans, bring Hashem into the world. In the Sistine Chapel, I've never been in there. I've seen pictures, and I'm less inclined to go there than I ever was for certain reasons. Their understanding is that when you see the painting of God, he's on this piece of material that cherubs are transporting him. And that's one of the images, I think it actually comes from Kabbalah, that Hashem is transported into the world by malachim, cherubs. After all, a malach is a messenger. A messenger also travels. So these are all the images that you get, but we ourselves, actually, when I was davening this morning, I get these thoughts. I mean, I hope I should get thoughts when I'm davening. So I was saying the part, right after Baruch Hu, where you're talking about malachim, and they're rushing to and fro, and they're saying kadosh, 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 and all of those things. There's never the word of ahava, that Hashem loves them, and immediately we go to ahavat rabbah, ava rabbah, that Hashem loves us. Because with all that angels do, and don't forget, we're talking about Briat Hola, Hashem had the angels. He could have stopped. When he says, Naseta Adam B'Tzalmeinu Kidmutenu, our Medrashim say that he consulted with the angels that pre-existed. And they're great. They can always be telling Hashem, Kadosh, Kadosh, you're the best. There's nothing like you. Wow, you are amazing. Wasn't good enough because they don't have a choice in it. And that doesn't breed love. Love has to be done by choice. Love has to be done willingly. So he created us who are very much less than angels, very much, in many cases, and yet we are above in some way. And that's all the discussions about bringing the Torah into the world, and the Malachim are fighting Hashem, don't do it, you're going to make a big mistake. I'm sure Hashem thinks every so often that maybe he did, whatever. Okay. Zu tachlit abriya, to connect to Hashem. The kiyesh tov l'mala mizeh, In other words, is there any greater tov than to take us very physical human beings? I mean, some of us aren't so physical. Many of us are not elevated at all. And in fact, without elevation, we are just higher monkeys. There's nothing really more to us unless we are elevated. But when we elevate, so he took people who really could be seen in the world as they are by many scientists and many biologists as simply more evolved monkeys, which is not what we are, but it certainly could be seen that way and is, and give us the opportunity to connect to something, some being that is totally ineffable, impossible to even describe, so totally other, and yet we're allowed to connect. He gave us that opportunity. It's mind-boggling. It really is mind-boggling when you sit back and think about it, except that most of us don't sit back and think about it. I would say this pandemic for a lot of us, and obviously the period we just went through of Elul, the Aseret Tshuva into Sukkot, certainly highlights that fact that we are allowed, permitted, encouraged to connect to Hashem, and that is Tov. And as it says in Mesilat Yesharim, in the beginning of the book, man was created for one purpose only, to get pleasure in connecting to God and to appreciate his Shekhinah. Because that is the only real pleasure that doesn't make you fat, waste your time, all the other things that we do in the pursuance of the pleasures that we often pursue. Perfection for human beings is only in connection to God, because he's the only thing that is perfect. And therefore, if you want to connect to perfection, it's Hashem. Nothing physical is perfect. And how do we know that? Because we're never satisfied. If anything physical were perfect, you'd never want more. You'd have it and you'd say, wow, I have the perfect car. Nobody has the perfect car. A new model comes out, that's it. Your kid says, I want the newest model computer. I'm going to be happy with it until the next one comes out. And we say in the Gemara that nobody ever dies with having achieved 1/2 of the material goods that they wish to achieve. Ein l'davar sof. There's no perfection in physicality, and we know it because we're never satisfied. You would be satisfied with perfection, because what else would you want? So therefore, we know that nothing physical is perfect, and therefore, perfection is only in connecting to Hashem. And that is what David HaMelech says in Tehillim Ayin Gimel, Va'ani kirvat Elokim li tov. Only, as for me, only connection to God, that is tov. Only that. Kirak zehu atov. Now, he says the truth of the matter is that the perfection of connection, you like that? Perfection of connection. The perfection of connection was in Gan Eden. The Adam was totally connected to God, but he disconnected himself. And we talk about Gan Eden and being Olam Haba. So the real connection to Hashem happens in Olam Haba. Because after all, this world is a corridor, and that's where Tzadikim Yoshvim, and they have their crowns on their head, and they are contemplating Hashem's grandeur. However, even in this world, one can get some of that connection. It isn't waiting for you there. And it says in Gemara Brachos, I looked it up, it's very beautiful. It says, when the rabbis took leave from the school of Rab Ami. In other words, when they said goodbye to each other, what would they say? And some say it's Rabbi Chanina. May you see your requirements provided in your lifetime, and may your latter end be for the future world. In other words, may you also get some of the wonderful, ineffable gifts, these great elevated gifts, even in your lifetime. And of course, for the next group, we say it every morning. But the Karen is there for you in Olam Haba. You eat fruits of it. Our lives are better by mitzvot. I think most of us would agree that we love Shabbos and we're so grateful we have it. And if we didn't have to do it, we probably do it anyway. It's just that we might not, because part of what forces us to do what's good for us is the fact that it's a command. But at any rate, so we can get some of it here. We can have some of this appreciation of Hashem, some of this connection to Hashem, some of this pleasure in connecting to Hashem, the feeling of closeness. Somebody just put it now and they said, they think that there was a gift in this pandemic. I think there were many gifts in this pandemic, and many tsaris, I'm not going to deny it. But she said that one of the gifts, and she's got it tough, she's a single woman, eats many meals by herself. She said, but the gift is that Hashem ripped away many of those coverings, many of those illusions that we had. We had illusions that our leaders would take care of us. Yeah, right. We had illusions that science would take care of us. Not much. We had illusions, and I hate to say it, that rabbis would take care of us. It's also been an illusion. And we've learned, if anything, ein od milvado. And that, I think, is a gift. We know now that we really are connected to only one who can do anything. Why he's doing this, we don't know. But there is a bit of a not relief, but there's a consolation in knowing that everything is being orchestrated by one who's never done bad. Now, why it looks bad, why it feels bad, that's another story. But Hashem doesn't do bad. And therefore, and remember, if you want to argue, well, yeah, but what if somebody kills somebody? There, at least, there's human intervention. So if you want to argue that Hashem allows people to do what they're going to do, even if it's not a good thing, but this is not that. This is coming from something that didn't come from a human. It came from a bat. I don't know what it came from. But whatever it came from, this is a natural occurrence. And therefore, it's clearly orchestrated. And therefore, we have to understand that all of a sudden we see that we are not protected by other things, and there is a consolation in it. Okay. And that is the tachlis, he says, for all of Bria. And everything in creation was made for us. Again, the order of creation is that everything is prepared for the guest. We are the guest. We say, Bishvili nivra ha'olam. The world was created for my benefit, because it was created for the benefit of a single human being, or arguably two human beings. But it was created not for a billion people. There were no billion people or billions of people. So I can say that the world was created for me. So it was all created for me. And everything in the world is made for one purpose. And the Rambam says it very clearly. He says, if you want to come to Avas Hashem, go out and look at the world. And everything in the world is yelling, there's a God, there's a God. God gave you this, God gave you that. He created amazingly for you. Our cells, everything. It's literally mind-boggling. We have not plumbed, for not only not the depths, I don't think we've gotten beyond the surface in understanding how much this world was created to be habitable by us. Zehu tachlat hatov sheyulud isha mesugal hagiyah. When he wants to talk, when they want to talk about how physical we are, we're called yulud isha. Somebody that a woman gave birth to, with all the placenta and the mess and the physicality. It's a physical birth. We are physical human beings. We're born similarly to the way animals are born. All mammals are born similarly. But we, Yilud Isha, can get to the highest of heights. We could. Abraham was a Yilud Isha. Yitzchak was a Yilud Isha. Yaakov was Moshe. We know that, right? He got put into that teva. The greatest human beings started out all the same way and reached, in many cases, tremendous heights. He says that the Ramban says in Dveikut Hashem, Ala pasuk la'avot Hashem elokech lelechet b'chol drachav u'ledav kabo, which is in Dvarim, which we read a few weeks ago. V'yitachen teshechlol hadveika lomar shetiyeh zocher Hashem v'avato tamid. He says that means that in order to connect to Hashem, we should be thinking and connecting and in loving Hashem all the time. Lo tipared machshavatcha mimenu v'lechtecha b'derech zhakumecha. Even when you are on the derech, and that means taking care of your business life. You're out there. When you're out there, when you lie down, when you're ostensibly going to sleep, when you get up, the first thing, moda'ani, that we should be in total connection with Hashem. There are stories of great rabbis who were obviously on a much higher level than this, who, at least one I heard about, who preferred to do surgery without total anesthesia, because he said that total anesthesia will separate me from Hashem. I will be totally unconscious. The unconsciousness of overall anesthesia is different from sleep. When I wake up, I've been anesthetized. I've had total anesthesia. I've been put under. When you wake up from being put under, you're not even aware that the time went. It's 1 minute later. It could have been 6 hours later. I don't know if everybody has the same experience. I know my experience. I feel as if I was just put under and now I'm out. There's no feeling that time has passed, which is not the truth when I'm sleeping. When I wake up in the morning, I'm aware that I've been sleeping. I may remember dreams. I may think of things that happened. So this Rav did not want to be put under because it would disconnect him from Hashem, and that was more painful to him than to have the pain of the surgery. Maurice is looking and saying, Maurice is looking, not me, and I'm saying, not me, and we're all saying, not me, put me under, I don't want the pain. But for people who really experience this, evidently, that's a psychic, intellectual pain that is even greater. And therefore, it should be everywhere. And this is interesting. He's saying when I'm talking to a person, I'm talking to Hashem. And that's interesting when we think of the story, which we're going to read in a couple of weeks, when Abraham stops talking to Hashem to talk to those Arab travelers that he invites into the house. It's actually the Maharal, I believe, in the Gur Aryeh, who says that he wasn't turning away from Hashem. He was addressing the Tzelem Elokim within them. He never turned away from Hashem. This is what he's saying. When you are talking to somebody else, you're talking to Hashem. What does that mean? It means to me that I am speaking to that person the way I know Hashem wants me to speak to him. I'm really speaking to Hashem and saying, is this okay? Am I doing it right? That's a very high level. Most of us, possibly none of us, can keep it all the time, but it's the idea that whatever I'm doing it in front of Hashem and more for Hashem. Let's say I were trying out for a job, okay? And my job was now going to be to interview potential potential workers. I was going to be personnel manager. And they wanted to see how I do. So the guy who's trying to hire me is standing there. And he says, I want you to do an interview. I'm going to bring one of my people in. I want you to do an interview as if you're trying to hire them. I want to see what kind of questions you'll ask. So this person comes in and I start interviewing them. I know I'm not interviewing them. They have a job already. This is a test. Who am I talking to when I'm talking to this person I'm interviewing? Talking to the boss. I hope I'm saying it right. I want this job. That's pretty good, actually. I just thought of it. I like that. So when I'm talking to a person, every conversation is a test. Hashem put somebody in my face and said, I want to see how you're going to talk to them. So when I'm talking to them, I'm really talking to God. And I'm saying, and I'm trying to make it, I want the job. The job is Olam Haba. I want the job. And when I do a job, when I do anything, I'm not doing the thing. I'm at a test and I'm being watched and I got to do it the right way. If I give tzedakah, that person he doesn't need me. The ani, he'll get the money he's supposed to get. It was determined on Rosh Hashanah. If I don't give it to him, somebody else will. It's a test. Hashem is saying, okay, I'm going to give you somebody. Let me see how you do. And we should see the whole world this way. By the way, now that I'm saying this idea, I realize that I have heard similar things before. This is not original, but it really is a very strong idea that every single thing we do is a test. And Hashem is the boss. And we're really not doing it for that person. We're really not doing it to that person. We're really doing it for the boss. And we have to do it the way he's going to hire us. Hiring us could mean he'll give us another year. He'll say, okay, you know what? I'll keep you around for another year. You're hired for another year of life. We all want that. So we want to pass the tests. He says, Barat Abriya lehitiv libroav, ki miderach hadosh shekein kol mitziyot abriya. Okay, so the same ideas. And then we can say Bereishit abriya, v'haaretz hayta tohu vavohu, v'choshech al pnei tehom. So that's the very beginning, right? We're doing all of Perek Aleph. We ended with Tov Ma'od, Vayechul Hashemayim V'aretz. That's already the next. That's already Perek Bet, right? And the beginning is the Torah, the land, the Olam, whatever it is, was Tohu Vavohu and Choshech al Pnei Tehom. And what does Hashem say? Yehi or, Vayehi or, light. Amnam ha'artziyut v'chomriyut hinam tohu vavohu. Everything that is physical is, in fact, tohu vavohu. Light, interestingly enough, is the one thing, because there's a question whether light is a particle or light is a wave. A wave has no physicality, a particle does. And the answer is both. So light is very interesting. Light is the chibur on some level of the physical and the non-physical world. What's physical about a flame? Or what's physical about light? It could be a particle, so there's a physicality. I don't get all that, but I know that it's true. But on the other hand, I can see it. I can't see love. I can't see impatience, but I can see a fire. I can see light and I can see a flame. And not only can I see light, but light makes me see. Without light, I can't see. It's not only that I can see the light, but the light makes me see. And it's very interesting that we all know that. If you think about it in comics or a cartoon, when somebody gets something, they have a flash bulb, right? That's the image always. That's the little image that they put there. Got it. And we use it. It was illuminated to them. They saw the light. All of these things means understanding and seeing, but seeing not only physically. We said that before. The physical world is complicated and messy and tohu vavohu. Look at today. I mean, do we not get it? Is the world a mess now? It is. I don't know that we can remember a time when the entire globe was as much tohu vavohu that it is now. Sure, in parts of the world, it's been more tohu vavohu at certain times. World War II in Europe, and probably things happening in Africa. And, there have been times when it's been very tohu vavohu in different parts of the world, but globally, where it's hit everybody, that I think is unusual. And it really seems that the world is tohu vavohu right now. But then Hashem added something to this mishmash, tohu vavohu, chaotic world. And by the way, chaos is one of the elements of the world. There is an element of chaos built into the world. So say scientists. It says Vayior. When we see the world with a different eye, a godly eye, an illuminated eye, then we see the world differently. If we think the world is chomriyut, we are not seeing with light, because that light came after the chomriyut. The chomriyut takes us to before the creation of light. And before the creation of light, everything was chaos, irredeemably chaotic. And ultimately, the physical world is irredeemably chaotic. That's what Kohelet is saying. But if we can go beyond that, then he can understand what world is all about. In Kohelet, and I'm going back to it, Kohelet says it in a tachat hashemesh way. When we are under the light, what's under the light? What's the great light? Hamaor hagadol, the sun. When we are tachat hashemesh, and the light shines on us and the world, then we don't see really what's going on. If we are me'al hashemesh, the Gemara says, tachat hashemesh ein yitron, aval imala men hashemesh yesh yitron. If we are under the sun, we do not see beyond the chaos. But if we are above the sun and use the sun as a tool, and use not only the sun, but the light that exists above the shemesh, that is not dependent on physical light, but is also spiritual light. If we bring to the world spiritual light along with our physical light, then, because if you can't see the world, you're not going to be able to understand it. You're not going to be able to connect it to God. So you need physical light for that. You need eyes for that. Maybe that's one of the reasons that an Iver is considered a mate, because he can't see the world. Therefore, it's impossible for him to elevate the world that he can't see into a higher plane. Obviously, they're spiritual. I'm not going to go into that, but that's what it says. But you can't just do it with physical light. You have to have the spiritual light. When we go with a elevated, a spiritual look, we see that the physicality is nothing. When he created the world, he did not make it for a hatavak hashmit because it isn't. That we should get closer to depending Hashem. Again, that's what that young woman said. We are more dependent on Hashem. We have no one we can depend on. Look at it now. Can we depend on anybody or anything? The greatest minds of medicine, science, drug companies. I'm not saying they'll never get there. Mitzvah Hashem, they will. But it's a long time. In the beginning, we thought weeks, months. Oh, they'll get it. I mean, putting the best minds, probably, who knows, countless billions of dollars have gone into this. First of all, the payoff will be huge if they come up with it. Think of the billions of dollars that are to be made if they come up with a vaccination that will be available for 7 billion people. It's countless. It's astonishing. But they haven't yet. And that's left us with a cliffhanger. And while we're hanging on the cliff, we can have doubts. Will they ever? Who knows? Maybe. We hope so. They think so. But right now, we're not there. We have almost no world leaders that are doing it really well. Certainly not the ones that we're familiar with. Okay? And it's just grabbing us. And the rabbis, unfortunately, we see that there's tremendous clash. Even in the Haredi world amongst Haredim, it's really scary. There are plenty of Haredim who say, wear your mask, wear your mask, wear your mask. Don't make big weddings. There are plenty of them. Unfortunately, the pictures are always taken of the ones who are not doing it. And therefore, in people's minds, I have a friend who sort of we reconnected. I know her from many, many years ago. She's a journalist in Paris. We had a Zoom meeting this week, and she said, look, my friends are asking me, what's going on in Israel? All the Hared, is there something about, she had a Jewish education, but she hasn't been from for years. And she said, they were asking me, is there something about religion that doesn't permit the wearing of masks? I said, first of all, it's the opposite. Most people would say it's the opposite. However, what are you seeing? You're not seeing, nobody's ever showing you the Haredim are wearing masks. I have driven in the last few months in the northern end of town. Ramat Eshkol, Mea Sha'arim, Geula, Sanhedria. Most of the people, by a vast majority, are in the streets with masks. But they're not the people that the media is taking pictures of. They're certainly not the people who are rioting. But most are wearing masks. And most are trying to keep to the rules. So I said that to her. I said, you're just not seeing the people who are. But that's it. But unfortunately, you see a few people, and if it's being highlighted, that's what you get. It's true in America, too. In America, it's almost worse because in America, you're living in Gullus. You're living in a country where you are essentially a guest. I just read a few very sobering things. One was a opinion article in Newsweek magazine that was written by a friend who told me about it. And it was critical of the behavior of Jews, of the governments also, but of Jews. And there was a very harsh letter. I don't even want to tell you about it because it was so harsh, by somebody Haredi against other Haredim. It's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing. Anyway, but again, it means with just God Hashem, Nikuda, Neto, it's God, the Zehu. Because if it's not God, we are really off tzalachas. You know what I'm saying? If it's nobody and not God, goodbye. So we cling to Hashem. He's come through till now, you know? So he says, Lo barul, okay. And he says, the Rebbe Mikubrim says that Le'elu hashkuim bo lahem aretz hatatov avo v'choshech. He says, if you are in the dark world, meaning the physical world, which is the dark world that doesn't have, you will see chaos. It will always seem chaotic because in fact it will. In fact, it is. If you live in the illuminated world of Torah, and that doesn't mean just because everybody who learns Torah is living in the illuminated world. Somebody just said, this guy who wrote, I'm not going to tell who it is, you can find it if you want to, but I'm not pushing it. This very highly critical letter by somebody who has stature. That's why his letter was written. He said, you got to know, we have nothing in common with these rioters who are doing these terrible things. We're talking about in America right now. He says, the only thing we have in common is that we both wear yarmulkes. He says, and wearing a yarmulke does not make you a religious Jew any more than standing in a garage makes you a car. Which I thought was a pretty interesting way of putting it. Says, somebody once said, I work with outreach a lot. I taught in outreach schools, and I did outreach work in America, and I've dealt a lot with Chozrim B'Tshuva, whatever. And regrettably, one of the things that we don't like to say, but we sometimes have to, is don't judge the religion by the religious. Because you're going to tell them you can't talk Lashon Hara, and then they go to somebody's house for Shabbos and they're talking Lashon Hara. It's hard. You would hope that the religious people would follow the religion. And we do, to be fair, but we're human, we fail. We're not always the very best representatives. We're not always the best Merkava. We're supposed to be a Merkava for Hashem, and sometimes we break a wheel, we break an axle, we're hobbling all over the place. We're not always doing such a good job. But he says if you want to live in an illuminated world, you got to grab onto that ore. Remember that ore that was created on the first day was not physical light. How do we know that? Because the physical light was created on the fourth day, when the sun and the moon and the stars were created. So it means that the ore of the first day, it says light, but they don't think illumination. It's not what it was. It was spiritual light. Because unless it's spiritual light, because that spiritual light is supposed to counterbalance the sohu vavohu. So that light has to allow us to see the sohu vavohu, as we say, in a different light. And therefore he says, we're almost done. So I want to say, so of course, what does he bring in? Guess. Shabbos. It's after all, it's the Netivot Shalom. And it's true that what happens after the world is Kitov, our Kiddush. Shabbos is brought in, and he says, why is Shabbos brought there? If this is about Bria, we says Vayechal, Shabbat. This is not Bria. The introduction of Shabbos should be with the Chagim and the Moadim and Shabbos and the Aseret Debrot. What's it doing here? He says because Shabbos was the creation that made us able to understand creation. It's not enough to be within creation, because if you are within creation and you can't contemplate it, after all, we are the only creations that are able to contemplate our own existence. There are no baboon philosophers. There are no whatever. Name your animal. Dolphins. They keep saying all these very, very smart. Oh, they're so smart. Oh, they're so smart. They're so close to us. They're nowhere near us. I don't know how they can go on with this. Because you could teach a monkey to take a stick and use it as a tool. Now they're really close to us. That's proving that we really are just higher evolved monkeys. When a monkey can sit at a typewriter and write Shakespeare, then I'll believe that monkeys and us are not so far apart. It doesn't happen. This whole idea that if you give them if you take an infinite number of monkeys and you give them an infinite number of time and you set them down to an infinite number of typewriters, they will type Shakespeare is nonsense. It's nonsense. It's mathematically impossible. Of course, we don't know what infinity means, but forget about it. It's just nonsense. It doesn't happen that way. And therefore, we can contemplate our own existence. We write books, we write poetry, we write philosophy. We're contemplating ourselves. We're doing this. We're thinking about life. But if you're within the physical creation of the first 6 days, you can't get above it. So what does Hashem do? He gives us Shabbos. And on Shabbos, he lifts us up above creation. And he says, here you are. You are not any longer just part of the physical world. Now I'm lifting you up and you can contemplate the physical world. When you can stop being part of creation for a minute, when you can stop creating. No creating. Creation's done. Now I'll pick you up and bring you up to me. We know that Shabbat is Me'en Olam Haba. It's when Hashem lifts us up. Moadim is when we bring Hashem into the world. We decide when Moadim are. The Sanhedrin decided when to declare a Rosh Chodesh. We determine Moadim. We invite God down. We set everything up and we say, come now, Hashem. Build the sukkah, come Hashem into the sukkah. We invite Hashem in. Shabbat, Hashem lifts us up. In Shir Hashirim, it's that the king took me to his bedchamber. That's Hashem taking us up and saying, now look at creation. Look at it from an elevated point when creation is over. I'll share just one last idea. This also includes really leaving creation behind. And that means everything. It says that on Shabbos, we're supposed to do what Hashem does, leave creation behind. We know Hashem really doesn't, because if Hashem doesn't focus on creation, we would just disappear. So Hashem is maintaining creation during Shabbat. We don't have to do that. We have to put it all behind us. Everything, not just physical creation and physical work, not only mlachot, but also machshavot. I'm involved in a little bit of an overwhelming project these days, and right in the middle of it. And it's going to be a challenge to leave it behind, but you're supposed to. Whatever your thoughts were, what did I do this week? What am I doing next week? What am I in the middle of doing? Get rid of it. It's also creativity. It's also human creativity. You could create another way. You could talk about Torah, whatever. But your own personal involvements, these are all part of this world. That's all what you're doing. You're doing more in this world. Whatever projects you have, these are earthly projects. They're to be accomplished here. You're not thinking of projects after 120 years. So those, forget about. Whatever happened, stop. You can start again after Shabbos. You probably will. But for 25 hours, take the break. Because if you're not going to be out of the world, you're going to be in it. And then you can't contemplate it. And then you can't see it with light. So spend your 25 hours with creation that matters, with creating mitzvot, with creating knowledge that is Torah, with getting closer to Hashem, feeling closer to Hashem in that day when you can't be a creator. So good Shabbos, everybody. And thank you. You should know that my most creative thinking is done while I'm talking. 90% of what I just said, I never thought of before. Maybe not 90%, but 50 for sure. So I always appreciate my audience because they help me think. And being there, it's just wonderful. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Chaya. I have lots of people hear this on Facebook because it was a really lovely shiur. Thank you
so much, Peter. Thank you always for your efforts. Thank you, Morris, for your loyalty. Because not that many people get on, and I really like to see faces. I could do this to a screen, but it wouldn't be nearly the same. And I really appreciate that Peter always hangs in there, and she has such an expressive face, and it's so helpful. And so do you. Have a good Shabbos, everybody.